Some of my cakes ended up in Vogue. I ended up on the BBC, Channel 4, the whole shebang. And lots of people asked me to talk about the luxury world. So I started talking about the luxury world. I created my own podcast. And then I thought, why not put everything I know into a book? That's how I wrote my book, The Luxpreneur. You don't have to come from luxury to start a luxury brand.
Right.
But what you do have to have is a knowledge of who you are. People forget luxury is emotional. It's very emotional. Only emotion would let you put your name down for a handbag and wait 2 years.
What would you say to people who are trying to connect with affluent clients and how to kind of approach that?
I have a huge chapter on luxury clients and how to find them and the different types in the book. But I would first of all say,
Hi Black Circle family, we're back for season 2 and as ever I'm your host Zoe Cornabat. I'm really excited to bring you a new season and new fantastic guests, and starting with our first fantastic guest is Elizabeth Solaru. Elizabeth, welcome. You are the Luxpreneur. You have a history in microbiology, headhunting, cake artistry and now luxury branding. So I think with every story, we start at the beginning. Let's talk about kind of like your microbiology background and what led you into kind of luxury branding.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So at university, I studied microbiology as a degree, and then I went on to do a master's in medical microbiology and parasitology. A mouthful, I know. And I was very happy and content to work in a lab, to remain in a lab. I remember my first job at St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington. I was so excited because the hospital discovery of penicillin.
Yes.
So excited. And I worked with the NHS for several years. I ended up working at Great Ormond Street Hospital. And I was fairly happy, okay-ish. But then I remember one day, I just thought to myself, I don't want to be a lab rat the rest of my life. There's got to be more to life than this. It was actually a colleague talking about courgettes. And I know it sounds weird, but what tended to happen was that in the lab, you get put in a certain spot for 6 weeks, and then you rotate onto another bench. And I was opposite this particular colleague, and every day she'll talk about what she was cooking for dinner. Oh. And I thought, okay, it's an okay conversation, but I thought, this can't be my life.
No, the repetitiveness of it every day. I don't know about your lasagna.
And there were a couple of other mitigating factors as well. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to leave. So I resigned with no place to go, which I would advise nobody to do. Resigned with no place to go on a Monday. And I remember I was walking by the lab phone on a Thursday, and whoever walks past, you pick it up when it rings. And I picked it up. And it was an agency going, we are a medical agency. We're looking for locums. Would you like to work for us? Usually he even said, I know it's going to be a no, because they always try to recruit those of us already working in labs and they were always short of staff. And I just said, you know what? Today's your lucky day. Yes. And so I then started locuming, and then I decided to go off and do an MBA because I thought to myself, I want to do something in business, but I had no idea. And I thought, MBA has business in it. So I went off and did an MBA. And it was while I was doing my MBA and networking like crazy, because I realized my CV was all science. I'd never really worked in an ordinary office. So I then networked my way into a headhunting role.
Right.
And I was very lucky to work for the company. They did some of the most incredible recruitments, including recruiting for all the executives of the Olympic Delivery Authority in those days. So it was really good fun. I learned a lot on the job. I also was seconded to the Cabinet Office to start up a leadership program. I did a lot during those several years. And then 2008, the recession hit. And of course, a number of us got let go from our jobs.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, okay, milestone age, a milestone moment. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So I set up my cake company. And it was a lot of, to be fair, even while I was headhunting, I was doing the cakes as a side hustle, but I didn't tell anyone. And then a number of things happened. By some random fluke, long story, we'll talk about it later, I ended up on TV. I did this incredible show, the precursor to Bake Off. And I won 3 out of 3 times. And that was my claim to fame in the cake world. And boom, started doing cakes. And again, a random phone call one day ended with me working for Lady Elizabeth Anson, who happened to be the cousin to the late Queen Elizabeth, and ended up working for her. And again, that was how I got into the luxury world. And there were a couple of other things happened. But anyway, did the cakes. Honestly, it's a different world.
Yeah.
Some of my cakes ended up in Vogue. I ended up on the BBC, Channel 4, lots of, Mike Tatler, the whole shebang. And then the pandemic hit. And of course, all of us, we're at home. And lots of people asked me to talk about the luxury world.
Right.
And then I realized that actually I do know quite a lot about the luxury world, because I would literally be facing them.
Those clients, right?
Yeah, the FaceTime I had with them. And so I started talking about the luxury world. I created my own podcast. I had an amazing platform, started talking about it on social media. And then I thought, why not put everything I know into a book? That's how I wrote my book, The Luxpreneur.
Yes, and we're going to come on to that.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting transition, and we spoke about how you pivoted. But kind of, where did your love for cake making come from?
Okay. So when I was about 10, I remember a friend gave me a cookbook. And in the cookbook was a recipe for Victoria sponge, very simple. And I tried it. It worked. And that's how I started baking when I was about 10 or thereabouts. And but of course, background, Nigerian family. There's absolutely no way you're going to catering college. You are going to university and you're studying law or medicine.
Right.
And so that I just had to shelve it. But I'd always baked. I love baking. And while I was working as a headhunter, I would literally save up my money and go to cake camp in America. This was way before social media. So I would buy books. I'd have to wait for about 6 weeks or 3 months for the books to arrive from America. You go to, in those days, we used Foyle's bookstore in London. Yeah. So that was, that was the bookstore that would order stuff for you. You go, collect. I discovered Martha Stewart. I discovered a wide range of sugarcraft experts. And then I'd write to them and beg to take lessons with them. And that was how my love was really, really born.
That's incredible. And so to going from Victoria sponge to some of the decadent, beautiful kind of artistry cakes that you make, how long would you say that honing in on that skill and that detail kind of takes?
Oh, I think it took me quite a good few years. Yeah. I'd say at least 7, maybe 5, 7 years. But then that's not the problem, actually. The problem is the confidence.
Right.
Because I remember when I was asked to take part in the program, The Great Cake Bake, which was on wedding TV in those days, I actually said to the guy, I'm not a professional. And I gave him a list of cake people to go and talk to. And he said, no, I want a mixed ability group to take part in the program, and it's about you and how you feel. And I think nowadays, because of social media and because of other things, there's a lot more awareness, and also people are, and I think women in particular are encouraged now to be more confident. We feel more empowered now. So I see these generational differences where they learn something and then 6 months later, they're an expert, they're teaching it. In my day, you had to wait for years. And I don't know where it came from. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that it was a different mentality. And it's about how you see yourself. So, and how you feel ready, and also how creative and innovative you are. So there's a technical side, yes, which you learn and you master, but there's also the other side of confidence.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about some of like the pivotal moments in becoming a luxury consultant for you. What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the pivotal moments was when I was asked to speak on some of the best stages in the world. So I remember, I remember when, you know, I was approached a massive stage, and I kept thinking, gosh, you know, but nobody knows who I am, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember after I actually followed. No, I was before the keynote speaker.
All right.
I was before the keynote speaker. So I knew people came to see the keynote speaker. They came early, not to see me, but to see the keynote speaker. And I remember I delivered my speech, et cetera, et cetera. And somebody came up to me and said, to be quite honest, before this conference, never heard of you, but now you're the only person everyone's talking about.
Right.
So
So that's the powers of like your networking, putting yourself forward, taking forward opportunities.
Exactly. Yeah. Taking those opportunities. Also, there is something about expertise and also something different in what I was delivering. And also my journey from starting with £40 and a secondhand mixer and doing luxury cakes, because there's something about luxury that is gatekept. And I say to people, but the brands you know today, they did not start out luxury. Well, they started out as luxury brands. But my point is the founders themselves did not start out luxury. So if you take somebody like Gucci, founded by Guccio Gucci, not many people know that he left home when he was 17 in Italy, came to the UK, and he worked as a porter at the Savoy Hotel. And it was through handling luggage gave him the idea of designing elegant leather goods, because he came from a family of leather makers, of leather processors. So it's not where you start, it's how you end up and what happens to you during that process. So I think my mission is anyone can start a luxury brand. So don't be frightened to start and don't be frightened to say, what I'm creating is high-end and it's for high-end clients. You don't have to come from luxury to start a luxury brand.
Right.
But what you do have to have is a knowledge of who you are. Because when you are sitting opposite luxury clients, they're pretty astute. That's why they have money, right?
Right.
And they can suss people out. So they want to know, who are you? You know, how did you end up here? What's your story? Are you another are you another person in the queue with a handout? Who are you?
Right.
Can we trust you? Are you going to be loyal? And that was the reason I wrote my book, because the first part of the book is dedicated to you as a person. So as a luxury brand founder, you need to know your type. So for example, I type to myself, and I'm an artisan as well as a visionary. Good things you might think, but there is also a downside. So the good thing about being an artisan is that I pay attention to detail. I'm very much about my craft, and that's great. And being a visionary, I'm always thinking, what's ahead of the future? I do a bit of future casting. I love to see the direction things are going. But being an artisan means that I'm so focused on the product, I'm not paying attention to the business. I'm not paying attention to the money.
Right.
I'm not paying attention to costs. I'm not paying attention to very much, actually, because I just want to do my cakes. And then being a visionary means I'm not grounded in the present, because the present, your habits in the present are going to determine what happens in the future. So it's all well and good you future casting, but it needs to be grounded in something.
Right, absolutely.
So that is the first part of the book. So I make you look at yourselves, and I tell you the kind of people you need around you to make a success of your luxury business.
Sorry, yes. I just wanted to kind of pivot back a little bit, and I want to kind of get into like demystifying luxury. What makes a brand luxury?
Great question. So I talk about the 5 pillars of a luxury brand. So for me, and this is my personal opinion.
Yep.
And the reason I make it basic and simple and break it down is that there are so many luxury books out there written by professors of luxury, but they're writing it from an expert view. They're not writing it from a founder view, and some of them have worked with the big brands where there's budgets, where there's money.
Budget is important.
Exactly. It's very important. So in the 5 pillars, roughly, if you imagine a table, 4 legs, each is a pillar, and then center. So I'm going to start with the center, storytelling. So the kind of story you tell about your brand. Earlier, I spoke about Gucci. If you take Coco Chanel, father dumped her in an orphanage when she was 10. The nuns taught her how to sew. She then left the orphanage, set up a hat shop, and then pivoted into making dresses, couture, etc., etc. But the one thing she did do was, and the one thing Gucci also did, because they all have something in common, is look at what was existing and say, we can do better. And either innovate in some way, create in some way. Many say that Coco Chanel invented the little black dress. She didn't. But
okay. I've always heard that myth. So
right. She didn't exactly.
Right.
But what she did do was say to the fashion of the day, you're too frou-frou. This, she put her stamp on the little black dress and on a jacket such as this. So she kind of said, this is what modern women are wearing. And this is what the women that come to me, this is what I'm going to dress them in, take it or leave it. So that is what makes the difference. And this is why it's important to know who you are and know yourself, and to be able to stand behind your convictions. So storytelling is very, very important. And then the other pillars are things like craftsmanship, because, and I'm loath to say this, but a lot of what's out there is actually quite mediocre. It's not that even some of the luxury brands, some of the products are not that amazing in terms of quality.
Do you put that down to kind of where we're exporting from? So maybe it's no longer made in Italy, but it's coming from China, or what would you attribute to that?
This is one thing that really, and maybe again, this is where my views are slightly different. Yep. I think sometimes we automatically think if it's from a particular part of the world, the quality is there, because they've been telling us for over and over and over again.
Great branding,
exactly. Great PR, great branding. But I can tell you other parts of the world, and people talk about, oh my God, from China. And I'm like, actually, I have seen some incredibly made, beautifully. When it comes to craftsmanship and artistry, the Chinese are some of the best in the world. The Japanese, parts of Africa, parts of India. So, for example, I created an awards called the Diversity in Luxury Awards.
And we're going to come on to that.
And there's a reason I bring it up now. There's a needlecraft school in India that does embroidery for Dior and Hermes.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And this is why I get pissed off when people go, oh, well, maybe because it's no longer made in XYZ. That's not the point. Because let's be fair, the Chinese will make a product to your specification.
Yes.
So maybe it's the brand not specifying enough, not raising the bar enough. I know for sure that certain brands in France, they still have their traditional workshops, and every handbag or leather good that comes out of that workshop, is done by a fully trained craftsman. So for some handbags, it takes 7 years to fully train to be able to create such a handbag.
Right.
So that's why there's a waiting list. That's why the handbag is about 5-6 figures. So again, when we talk about craftsmanship, we need to be very careful in terms of thinking that only certain parts of the world do amazing craftsmanship. And another little fact, Italian leather, some of the leather used, let me rephrase that. Some of the leather used by Italian brands actually originates from Nigeria.
Oh, okay. Let's give that the spotlight for a moment, because I think and again, historically, when we think of China and India, we're talking silks and satins and all of that, those beautiful materials. That's where it came from.
Exactly. And we're talking even parts of India, we're talking pearls.
Yes.
Their Maharajas, Maharanis were playing with pearls. I mean, you do them a favor, they just take a handful of pearls. And so again, we need to, and this is the origins of luxury. And this is the kind of thing that I'm trying to bring awareness of, that when it comes to luxury, any continent, any country is capable of producing luxury.
It's like decolonizing luxury, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
And also bringing in culture, because luxury, in my mind, when I think of luxury, I'm thinking culture. Luxury is culture.
Yes.
But the branding is, just because people have a more prominent brand doesn't make them more luxury.
Right. Absolutely.
So that for me is a difference. And that's the kind of thing I talk about, that, I'm talking from a founder's perspective. So again, when you've done the grit, the hard work, your perspective is different.
Right. Of course. And you touched on earlier about kind of, when you're sat down in front of these high net worth clients, they kind of already get the cut of your cloth. So what would you say to people who are trying to connect with affluent clients and how to kind of approach that?
Oh, okay. I have a huge chapter on luxury clients and how to find them and the different types in the book. But I would first of all say, you need to know the different types of luxury clients. There are some types that you can only get to through gatekeepers.
Okay.
So you need to know who the gatekeepers are. I give loads of examples in the book of gatekeepers and how to approach the gatekeepers. And sometimes the gatekeepers are snootier than the actual client.
Yes.
So you need to be able to manage gatekeepers. And there's another type of client that you can literally approach directly. You can find them online. They are online, but many of them may have private accounts.
Right. Okay.
But you then need to follow the people you think they would follow, or follow the brands you think they would follow. So a little hint, if you follow in a particular brand, if the brand has taken the time out to respond to a particular person, that should give you a massive clue
tip
that person is very, very important. And because they love congregating with each other, the different luxury types, they love congregating with each other. There's always one who's public on social media. So if you follow them, and they accept for you to follow them, the platform will indicate the other people that you should be following. So that is another massive clue. And I also give examples of the kind of associations and professional bodies and members clubs that you could probably join. But if you haven't got much money, you can talk your way into being invited as a guest. But then depending on the rules of the club, they may not approve of that kind of fraternization.
Right.
But again, it's about relationships. Because if you have a great relationship with somebody, they would find an opportunity for you. Because sometimes we try to find opportunity, but develop the relationship first. And then they'll say to you, so what do you do? And how can we help you? And that is how it works.
That's very, very interesting. And to touch on kind of inclusivity in the luxury arena, what would you say? And I know that we spoke about the diversity in luxury awards. So kind of what's its impact so far, and your advice for underrepresented entrepreneurs that you would give?
Yeah, I would just say, number one, don't be frightened, don't be scared.
Yep.
Just come into it. Find your allies. You will find people who are allies and people who are not, to be honest with you. There are a lot of gatekeepers. However, you just create your space. You need to create your space, and you need to develop because I don't know whether you're creating a product or whether you're delivering a service, you need the confidence to be able to stand behind whatever it is you're delivering, and then find your own opportunity as well. And if you're trying to enter a particular industry or sector, when I was a headhunter, this was my advice to candidates, so I'll treat it the same. I would say to them, find the 10 most influential people in that industry, follow them either on LinkedIn, social media, or the other social media platforms, whatever. Turn on your notifications, so whenever they post, you're the first to comment. If you find any interesting articles that you think they might like, send it to them. Obviously don't send it to them every day, but, send it to them. And if so for example, some of them, they give speeches, they're featured in articles. Find those articles, find those speeches. I even talk a bit about in my book about how to use Google, how we used to use it when I was a headhunter. So I do my normal Google searches, but then I use Google Images to see if they've ever appeared in the Getty Press.
Okay, yes.
I use Google Books to see if they've ever been written about in a book. And there are other parts of Google as well. Who are they associated with? So you begin to build a picture of this person that you're trying to network with. Obviously, do not be a stalker.
No.
And again, if they're not receptive, don't try to force anything. You can admire from afar for a while, because sometimes people need to know that you are sincere.
Yes.
And you're following them for the right reasons, etc., etc. And and before you know it, you're having conversations. And I also say to people, when you're commenting, you don't always have to agree with someone if you don't agree with them. There's always, you can say things like, other people might say, there's another point of view that states, or have you read about blah, blah, blah. They love a good debate, but it has to be healthy and respectful with the right distance. So so those are some of my tips.
Very, very good tips. And just to touch on the diversity in Luxury Awards a little bit more. So can you tell us about the founding of that, the reason for that, and kind of where that sits today?
Yeah, it kind of started with the pandemic. Obviously, we're all at home, 2020, nothing to do. And I remember Googling, I don't know why, I just Googled, is there any diversity in luxury? And I read a paper by a professor at Penn State University in America. And she was like, no, she looked and she couldn't find very many examples of diversity in luxury. And I thought, is that really true? So I then did a bit of digging, and I found that there is some diversity, but it's just not been showcased. So that's why I founded the awards. I did the first awards last year. And when I was giving examples, the needlecraft school in India that nobody's heard of. Also, for example, we found a jeweler, incredible jeweler, but only people in the industry know about him. He's done an exhibition with Sotheby's. He is very well respected, and the first jeweler to do sculptures in titanium. So we showcased that. So there were other people that got awards that we showcased as well. So for me, it's about finding lots of hidden gems. That my favorite, though, was a guy from Crewe, just an ordinary English bloke, a CGI artist, left school at 16, and he did a collaboration with Rolls-Royce. Or was it with Bentley? Can't remember. I think Bentley or Rolls-Royce did a collaboration with them. So those, for me, are the kinds of people that I love showcasing, to say that there is diversity. And also for me, I also looked at the cultural diversity. So it's not just limited to the UK. We're looking around the world, and we're finding people who could make leather goods, or they provide. There was a guy, another winner, he provides security services to the high net worth, and he's looked after a couple of presidents.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And he's a black guy.
Right.
And he's a black guy. So though that for me are amazing examples of diversity in luxury. And a last example is the CEO of Chanel. She's a woman of color, so everyone rejoiced when she was appointed. But that wasn't the reason she was a winner to me.
Right.
The reason she won was that when she was appointed CEO, Chanel has a fund for the education of girls. So if anyone's interested, go to the fund, go and apply.
Yeah.
And the fund, when she came in, the fund was 20 million euros. And when she came in, she increased it to 100 million euros.
Fantastic.
Right?
Yeah.
So for me, so when people talk about diversity and they put their money where their mouth is, I love that. So that was why she was a winner, because she was putting Chanel's money to good use for the education of girls.
That's fantastic. And I know you've got some esteemed people on the panel, on the judging panel. So how do you go about selecting? What's your process for those judges?
Yeah, for me, it's judges who, some I've been watching them and I know they have a strong commitment to diversity. Majority have their own businesses. That's very important. So they're in luxury, they have their luxury business, or they're very well known in their particular circles. And also people that get on with each other. And I love the different perspectives. So we have age diversity, we have gender, we have culture, so different parts of the world, because I didn't just want UK judges. I wanted judges from India, China, Africa. So I literally went geographical diversity, as well as culture, as well as age, gender, race, etc., etc. So that's how I kind of selected the judges.
Right. And another question I wanted to kind of get your opinion on. What would you say to those people who are a bit hesitant? They're a person of colour, but they don't want to put their face on the brand because they often assume like luxury, there's a certain demographic that won't go for the brand if they see. What would your advice be?
Oh my goodness, I think that is an incredible question, because I did that for the first few years of my cake business in those days. And I was actually speaking to my nephew recently, and I was like, if only you guys know what it was like in my day.
Yeah.
Oh my God, when you are probably the only scientist ever, black scientist ever, that's ever been recruited in that lab. Yeah, so it's a lot. So for me, my natural inclination was not to show my face. So a lot of people didn't even realize I was Elizabeth Cake Emporium. Yeah. They didn't know, because I never put my face on my website or anywhere. But then I remember thinking, you know what though, this is, because what happened was I did a couple of wedding cakes and they were splashed in the newspapers. One in particular, this wedding, the wedding singers were Elton John and Mariah Carey.
Oh, wow.
Just 2 out of 100 acts, by the way. So I then, my cake was on the front pages of the newspapers with Mariah Carey and the couple. And my phone was ringing off the hook. Family and friends going, oh my God, that is yours. We know your cakes. And then somebody said, you need to capitalize on the PR. So I had to show my face.
Right.
And it was the first time I showed my face on something major, apart from obviously the TV show. Because I knew the TV show was wedding TV and, it was in that world. But this was national and international. But I would say anyone who's hesitant, do not be hesitant. Do show your face. We have this incredible, a lady that I've been watching is a lady who founded Uncle Nearest.
Okay.
It's a whiskey brand.
Right. Yeah.
Whiskey is an interesting luxury industry. Uncle Nearest is the person who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. And he was a black guy.
Before Jack Daniels.
Yeah. He taught, so this lady then founded this company in honor of this guy, and it's premium whiskey, so it's expensive whiskey. And she bought her own land, and she put a face out there. Her name's Fawn Weaver.
Okay.
And she's incredible. So I would say to anyone who's hesitant, go look at what Fawn Weaver's doing. She's killing it. She's doing amazing. And there are other black and brands and people of color brands who are luxury, who are doing amazing things. And that is why I love this annual gathering of my awards, because I get all these incredible entrepreneurs in the room, different races, gender, blah, 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 blah. They're in the room round a table. And when people like that come together, we're talking ideas, we're talking innovation. So please do not be hesitant. Put your face out there. However, you need to think, okay, if I'm going to put my face out there, I need a team behind me. And in particular, if you're a woman, You might need, again, you need to, I'm going to tell it as it is.
Yeah, please do.
You're going to need hair, makeup, you're going to need brand colors. Just make sure that your personal branding, bring it up to a certain point.
Yeah. So it's polished and pristine.
It doesn't have to, well, I know for luxury, we like polished and pristine, to be honest. However, again, as I say this in the book, you need to know what type of luxury brand you are, because when you know your type, there's a brand called Jacquemus.
Yep.
They give the impression that they're not polished or pristine, but they kind of are.
Yeah.
But they kind of are.
Yeah.
But they do it in a very laid back, casual kind of way.
Yes. It's almost streetwear, but they're not streetwear, but it's
exactly.
Yeah.
And because I when they did their London launch of their shop, they invited everyone round for tea. They put a bed in it, and they used Auntie Bus as to promote it on TikTok.
Yes. Yeah.
So you need to because Jacquemus is a different type of brand to say the ultra polished Dior.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So different brands have different so you need to know your brand persona, and then think to yourself, and I do this as well, if I had Law Roach to style me, oh my gosh,
I love Law
it's my dream to meet him.
Yes.
If you had Law Roach styling you and advising you, what would you do? So that is what you should have at the back of your mind.
Yes, 100%. And he's just fantastic. And I can't wait to see what he does with Zendaya's wedding.
And by the way, I'm going to put it out there. Yeah. I'm available for the cake. I'm available for the cake.
Yes. Yeah, brilliant. So I know that we've spoken about the book, so the Luxpreneur. So if you could just kind of say like what resource it is for our listeners, and I know you've touched on some of the content of it, but let's go a little bit more into it.
Yeah. So the Luxpreneur for me is the book I wish I'd read when I started my business 20 odd years ago. So it's in 3 parts. I tell people it's in 3 parts. So the first part we've spoken about, which is about knowing yourself. The second part is around the basics of a luxury brand and the things you need to put in place.
Yeah.
For you to go have a luxury brand. And also it tells you the different types of luxury brands, because many people don't know that. So they go, oh my God, I just want to sell to rich people. I'm like, no. We need to do a step back, and you need to know the type of, so I break it down.
Yes.
So you can then pinpoint, I like this one. So are you going to be ultra luxury and you sell 2 products a year, but you sell them at extremely high price? Or are you going to be aspirational luxury brand where you can sell thousands, but at a slightly lower price? So you need to know that. And then the final part is on luxury clients, the different types, where to find them, how they behave, their psychology, why they buy, and what would make them stay with you. So I literally decode a lot, because for me, that was the part of the book that many people were asking me questions about when I gave my talks. And I thought, I'm going to actually because I looked for books that and no other luxury book was really talking about that. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to write a book. And many people in the industry say, oh my God, it's like a roadmap.
Right.
It's a roadmap for setting up a luxury brand. And somebody wrote to me and said, I have a business, but it's not a luxury business. But I bought your book because it'll give me the edge over my competitors.
Right.
And I still got a text today, and the lady said, you need to write another book. Right. It was so good. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, it has been described as the blueprint for luxury business. So there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you could give one actionable tip to start today to our listeners, what would that be?
Ooh, okay. Starting today, I would say start with your story. It starts with you. So start with your story. What is the story that you tell about your brand? And when I do my, because I do a luxury brand audit. So when I do my audit and I go to the website, because everybody wants to sound bigger than they are.
Yeah.
So on the website, and we are the leading company for the production of widgets. And I'm like,
what does that mean?
Exactly. And I'm like, actually, I know that's not true, but yeah. I'm thinking, nah. That's, so people want to know. So it's about why did we start making widgets?
Mm-hmm.
Why our widgets are, and again, people will say, oh my God, my X is better than, and I'm like, nah, sometimes don't say my product's better than what's in the market.
Yeah.
Because to be honest with you, it may not be, like a Dragon Den situation where they go in saying, we're the only one who does X. And then Peter Jones goes, no.
Yeah.
I've got 1,000 like you. So, but it's like why we started making widgets.
Mm-hmm.
This is me holding a widget when I was 10.
Right. The story.
Yeah. Because that is the emotion, because people forget luxury is emotional. It's very emotional. Only emotion would let you put your name down for a handbag and wait 2 years.
Oh,
for the privilege.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you may even be offered a handbag and it might not even be the color you want, but but you feel obliged, oh my God, if I don't buy it. So it's emotion. So you need to pull on the emotion. You need to, when it comes to making widgets, for example, it could be, okay, this particular widget was made by this particular person from this particular material that you can only source from this particular supplier. We are the only people in the world that can source that particular material from that particular supplier. And that particular material has been proven scientifically to be 1,000 times better than whatever's out there. But that's not all. We will only sell this widget to you via Harrods or via Selfridges or whatever. And, or even better still, if you want to make it ultra premium, this widget will only be sold. We're only making 100. And if we sell out, we sell out. So again, you're building your story, you're building the emotion. When, for example, when people talk about the perfume Chanel No. 5, there were 2 things around that story. The first one was that it was the first fragrance that was made from aldehydes. In her time, most fragrances were made from flowers. So you'd have rose or lavender or something. But she wanted a completely different fragrance. So she said, okay, make me something different, something modern. And according to folklore, the 5th bottle that she smelt was the one. And she went, we'll call it No. 5. Is it a true story? Probably not. But it's a compelling story. Yeah. And once you hear it, you'll never forget it.
Yeah.
So that is how you need to craft your story. And many people are ashamed to use stories of themselves because they think maybe the story is not good enough, or it's too this or it's too that. But if you take your story and you keep thinking of ways in which you can tell it, you might contact someone who's good at branding, brainstorm. How can we tell my story in a more compelling way, in a way that would get people emotional and make them buy from me?
It's a level of vulnerability, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And many people don't want to be vulnerable.
They don't.
Many people don't want to be vulnerable. Many people, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, not to interrupt, but there's a power of vulnerability in storytelling.
That's right.
You pair that up with exclusivity.
Yes.
And then I think you've got like a really good, solid, strong start.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the key word, exclusivity as well. You need to play around with exclusivity because many people are scared because they're thinking, okay, what if nobody buys? Or what if I don't get my 2 clients a year?
Yeah.
What if they don't come? Isn't it safer to sell to the masses? Isn't it safer to make my product as broad as possible? And again, it's up to you. You need to determine that. Mm-hmm. But I would say that if you're coming into the luxury industry, this is why it's important to know what level of luxury you want to be at and then push accordingly.
Yes, absolutely. So where can we find your book?
My book is on, find it in Amazon. And also Waterstones is in Waterstones, and it's on Amazon.co.uk as well as .com.
Brilliant. So just before we close the session, I always like to ask my guest a value. So one for your professional life and one for your personal life. So let's start with your professional life.
Okay, a value.
Yes.
This year for me, it's about, in my professional life, it's about connection. I really want to, because I looked at last year and I thought, took a lot of meetings. I did a lot of meetings, but I connected with very few, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about proper connections and deeper connections. So that for me is my word for 2025. I just want to really connect with people. And then for my personal life, I was thinking along the lines of marvels.
Okay.
I want to do marvelous things.
I love that. Marvelous.
Yeah, I want to do,
okay.
the word marvels.
Nice.
It was in my New Year message to people that I hope it's a year of marvels. Because people, Happy New Year, blah, blah, blah. But I want to do a year of marvels, marvelous things. That's what I really want in my personal life.
I love that. We haven't heard that word in the podcast yet. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And if people want to follow your journey, where can they connect with you?
The best place for me right now is LinkedIn. I post every day on LinkedIn. I'm almost like addicted because I fell out of love with the other platforms.
Right, yeah.
But LinkedIn and oddly enough, TikTok.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, and is it under Elizabeth Solaru?
Yes, Elizabeth Solaru. Under Elizabeth Solaru for both.
Yep.
So literally Google me, Elizabeth Solaru, and you'll find me. LinkedIn, and every day on LinkedIn, I try to share some luxury truth or tip or just something. So
fantastic. Thank you so much for our chat today. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I hope it's some really great takeaways for our listeners and our viewers today. And guys, thank you again for joining us. And if you're new, please do like, subscribe and follow. And you can find us on Instagram on the blackcircle.podcast or on YouTube at the Black Circle Podcast. Thank you so much.